When I think of Yamaha saxophones, I think of quality, consistency, and some absolutely diabolical pricing. You see, a couple of years ago, I made a video comparing entry-level Yamaha saxophones, the legendary and now discontinued YAS-23, alongside the new YAS-26 and 280 models. But what I uncovered back then when I was piecing together the pricing on those saxophones genuinely shocked me. First of all, I was surprised to discover that the most feature-rich and arguably best beginner saxophone, the YAS-280, wasn't even available in the US, even though it's available practically everywhere else, even Canada. To make matters even worse for US customers, Yamaha appears to ban its foreign dealers from shipping the 280, or indeed any Yamaha saxophone, to the US. But the bad news for US customers doesn't end there. The price of the beginner sax that was available in the US, the YAS-26, was so inflated in the US that it seemed ludicrous, costing over twice the price that you could pick it up for just about anywhere else in the globe. Now, it's been almost 2 years to the day since I released that original video, and I've got to say it's bugged me ever since. It also got me wondering, 2 years later, has anything changed? And what other pricing surprises are lurking out there on other Yamaha saxophones, and particularly from the intermediate, professional, and custom lines? I gotta say, if you're even slightly considering purchasing a Yamaha sax in 2024, this video is a must watch. But first, you might be thinking, what on earth am I doing standing in a half-finished shed? Well, welcome to the new SaxTuition studio. Okay, to be exact, it's the beginnings of a new SaxTuition studio, but I want to say that I could not do this without the support of you guys. I know I don't always post as often as I should, but I genuinely love making content for you guys and reading and replying to so many of your comments. And the only reason that I'm able to renovate this shed into a studio is because of your generosity subscribing to the channel and for heading over to saxtuition.com and checking out the great course content. Over there, you'll find my two best-selling courses, the SaxTuition Beginner Series, which will teach you the saxophone from scratch in only 12 lessons, and my latest course, Supercharged Saxophone, which is designed for the intermediate player looking to break free of the intermediate trap, sound like the jazz, blues, and R&B legends they adore, and most importantly of all, master their practice. So go on, head on over and check them out. Now, I just want to say from the outset that I'm going to be talking a lot about US pricing in this video, and I'm also going to be quoting everything in US dollars. But if you're based outside of the US, just like I am, there's still going to be some really, really important takeaways for you from this video, with the potential to save you hundreds, if not thousands of US dollar equivalents in your currency. So we're going to start by looking at the major US retailers. So that's Sam Ash, Sweetwater, Woodwind Brasswind, Musician's Friend, and Music and Arts. Most of these companies ship internationally. I've personally purchased from almost all of them at one point in time, and in general I've found their prices on most things to be really competitive. Unfortunately, when it comes to Yamaha though, if you expected any sort of competition between these major companies, you'd be sadly mistaken. In fact, each one of these companies are selling their entire Yamaha saxophone line for the exact same prices. A little bit curious, isn't it? Now, further digging has revealed that in fact, every Yamaha dealer in the US appears to be bound by the same fixed pricing structure. So no sales, no discounts, save for a very measly cashback from Yamaha on some of their intermediate and pro models. Now, on the face of it, this seems like a very anti-competitive move, but it probably wouldn't matter so much if these prices were generally in line with what you'd pay elsewhere in the globe. Unfortunately though, that's simply not the case. When compared to SaxShop, which is the international arm of sax.co.uk, the price difference is laid bare. Now, the first thing you'll notice when you look at this slide is that the YAS-26 is not actually stocked in SaxShop. And the reason for that is the YAS-26 is only available in very specific markets. Now, I haven't figured out why this is, because it is available in Australia, for example. It is available in Canada, but it's not available in Europe or most of the rest of the globe for some reason. So what we have to do is we have to compare the YAS-26 to the equivalent saxophone for international markets, and that's the YAS 280. Now, if you watch my previous video from a couple of years ago comparing Yamaha beginner saxophones, what you'll find is that the YAS 280 is the same saxophone as the YAS 26, but with improvements. So it's a YAS 26, but with a high F sharp key. It's got a much nicer case that goes along with it, and it's got a slightly nicer lacquer job on it as well. So it is really like the YAS 26S, if you want to think about it like that. And oh my goodness, just look at that price difference. So it is less than half the price than a YAS 26, and it's an upgraded model. It makes absolutely no sense. Almost 60% cheaper elsewhere. If we go on and have a look at the intermediate model, the 480, which is a strange saxophone. It's not a bad saxophone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a sax I would generally recommend. You know, if you've got a 280 model, for example, your next sax is likely going to be a professional model. I don't really see the benefit in going to an intermediate level sax first. That being said, you know, it's still a great saxophone. It is 25, almost 26% cheaper on Sax Shop. The YAS 62, which is a brilliant horn. It's a professional model saxophone. It's kind of a legendary saxophone made in Japan. 25% cheaper in Sax Shop. American sax players, I'm sure you guys are getting a little bit sick at the moment reading these price comparisons. The two custom line saxophones, so these are the very top of the range Yamaha Pro saxophones, the Z and the EX. You'll notice a 12.76% discount on the Z, and the EX is just a very modest 2.4% cheaper on Sax Shop. So Sax Shop is cheaper across the board, and bear in mind, of course, that this is a physical store with real people. They've got a lovely YouTube channel, which I'm sure you may have seen. So we're not comparing some shady back alley salesman here to these physical US stores. If we flick over to the next slide, you'll see that when I dug a little bit deeper into this pricing phenomenon, I noticed that Sax Shop, Long & McQuade, and Sax Woodwind and Brass all have very similar prices after you account for differences in currency conversion. So when you read through these tables, I think it's worthwhile to look at the Sax Shop price as being indicative of what you would pay in other brick and mortar stores elsewhere in the globe. Looking on to the next slide now, here things get even crazier, because now we're looking at Thomann, which is a German website which sells musical instruments. Now these guys are very, very cheap, as you're about to see. So once again, they're not stocking the YAS 26, same as Sax Shop in that regard, but on the 280, they're even cheaper than the Sax Shop. So they are down to $899, and to be honest with you, when I just looked earlier today, they'd come down again. They were advertising the 280 for $888. So even at $899, that's almost a 65% discount on the YAS 26. Over onto the 480, we're looking at a 38, almost 39% discount, 33% discount on that Pro 62 model, and then pretty decent discounts, I got to say, on those custom saxophones. So 21% and almost 20% on the Z and the EX model. Now, Thomann, they also have a pretty excellent website, and you can actually play samples of the saxophones being played in various different contexts, and they give you interesting stats about who bought what saxophone. And so as a website, they are a really excellent resource. But this, of course, leaves a major problem again for US customers, and that is if you try to purchase a saxophone through Sax Shop or through Thomann, you are greeted with these messages. And what's interesting here is they also are blaming Yamaha for this issue. They're saying literally they will not allow us to sell you this saxophone. So that lovely pricing comparison that I just showed you, excellent if you live anywhere else in the globe, but not handy at all if you do live in the US. So that leaves one other major option for American customers wanting to buy a Yamaha, and that, of course, is Amazon. Now, when we have a look at the Amazon table here, you'll notice there are some huge discounts to be had on Amazon. And of course, as you probably know, Amazon works a bit differently to other online stores. They do have products that they sell and ship through Amazon, but what they also integrate seamlessly into their platform are other sellers, which they call Amazon Marketplace. And what that means is that there are sellers around the globe that are willing to ship to the US. So they're willing to ship the 280 to the US, and they're willing to ship saxophones bought elsewhere to the US. So first thing, the YAS 26 is the exact same price on Amazon as what you can buy in the stores, so that's no use to us whatsoever. The YAS 280 is 55% cheaper on Amazon. So it's not as cheap as Sax Shop, it's not as cheap as Thomann, but it is still a massive saving. It's almost $1,500 cheaper to buy the YAS 280 on Amazon as opposed to the YAS 26 in a brick and mortar shop. The YAS 480, 30% cheaper. The YAS 62, also about 30% cheaper. And then almost no discounts whatsoever to be had on the custom line of saxophones. So that's a bit of a pity. But as you'll notice as we go along, the availability of a lot of saxophones on Amazon is a bit patchy. So it's not guaranteed across the board. And that means that, we can't always find a very good price on Amazon. Now, buying on Amazon as an American customer does have certain drawbacks. And from what I could tell on the reviews section of the YAS 280, American customers were generally really, really pleased with the saxophones that they got. But as this gentleman here is describing, after he purchased the YAS 280, he did try to register it on the US Yamaha website. They didn't allow him to do that because it is not a product that is actually generally sold in the US. But what he did do, supposedly, is contact the Asian Yamaha office, and they could confirm for him that in fact the 280 that he purchased was legitimate. It was a real Yamaha instrument. They gave him that verification, but he couldn't register the warranty in the US. And as we'll see in the next slide, somebody else, unfortunately, did encounter an issue with their 280. Maybe it wasn't packed correctly, or it had some sort of issue straight from the factory. And then Yamaha USA wouldn't honor that warranty. So then they have to try and chase up the seller through Amazon, and then that could be a bit of a pain in the butt. But that's what happens. So my take on that is, because we're talking about such an enormous difference in price, I mean, we're talking, almost $1,500 that you would save buying a 280, which is the upgraded 26, I think that's a risk that's worth taking. I mean, even if you had to pay a $500, even $1,000 repair bill, which, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't wish upon anybody, you're still saving money buying on Amazon, and you are getting a better saxophone. So to me, it's a risk, but it's a risk where the benefits, I think, greatly outweigh the possible downsides. So onto our takeaways from the Alto saxophones. I think it's pretty clear, if you're based in the US, the cheapest place to buy a Yamaha saxophone is Amazon, right? That's a general rule. And if you're based anywhere else in the world, the cheapest place to buy a Yamaha saxophone is Thomann. Moving along, just with my other takeaways, the biggest discounts, as you could have seen, are with the lower to mid-range saxophones, which is actually a little bit of a surprise because I would have thought there'd be more margin in the pro models, but apparently not. The YAS 26 simply makes no sense. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying it's a bad instrument, because it's not, but for the price that you pay, it just it seems ludicrous. And I'll just put a little caveat on that. In a place like Australia where the YAS 26 is available and it is cheaper, I still think the 280 is a better buy. I just think it makes more sense overall. The YAS 62 Series 3 is deeply discounted on Thomann and Amazon. It's really the only pro model that you get a really good discount on. So I think that is an instrument to really seriously consider. In fact, I think it's a hero of the saxophone lineup from Yamaha. And US customers receive little to no discount on the Z and EX models, the custom models, unfortunately. Hey, me again. You'll find links to all the products mentioned in this video in the description down below. And you'll even find the links to the Amazon sellers who are shipping Yamaha saxophones to the US. Yes, even the forbidden 280 model. Just a heads up that these are affiliate links, so if you purchase through them, I will get a small cut of the sale, but it won't cost you any extra. Hey, if you buy a saxophone, I might even be able to afford some new paint. Now, back to the video. Moving on to the tenor saxophones, I've just given you the whole picture now rather than give it to you in stages. Looking at the YTS26, you'll notice it's not available online, except for Amazon. It's the same price as in the US stores. So again, really not something we want to touch too closely. Having a look at the YTS280, which is the YS280 equivalent, massive savings to be had on SaxShop, massive savings to be had on Thomann, and still a decent saving to be had on Amazon. So we're still talking almost $1,000 cheaper on Amazon, but we're not seeing that 50% price decrease, unfortunately. On the YTS 480 side, the intermediate model, just a modest discount on Amazon and pretty good discounts on SaxShop and Thomann. And then as we get into the Pro models, you'll notice that the 62 comes with just a modest discount on Amazon and good discounts, particularly from Thomann and even from SaxShop. And then the two custom models are, across the board, more moderately discounted, except for Thomann. I mean, look at that, 17% cheaper for the Z model and 12% cheaper for the EX. So takeaways from the tenor sax side of things is that availability on Amazon is very limited, and the discounts are more modest. And unfortunately, I think that comes down to a supply-demand type thing. There's just simply more interest on the alto saxophones than the tenors, so they're a little bit harder to find. The YTS26 still makes no sense. Sorry about that, YTS26, but it just doesn't make any sense when compared to the 280. And Thomann is still the cheapest for non-US customers, and as we know, US customers receive little to no discount on the Z and EX models. Going on to the soprano saxophones now. I know a lot of people have asked about soprano saxes in the past. I've just got two listed here because these are the ones that are the easiest to find. So we've got the YS 475 Series 2. Now this is a intermediate model saxophone. They don't actually make a beginner soprano. 20% cheaper on SaxShop, 32% cheaper on Thomann, and 10% cheaper on Amazon than when compared to US stores. So still a decent saving to be had on Amazon. And then we look at the custom Z with the curved neck. Curved neck was just the easiest to find. 14% cheaper on SaxShop, 23% cheaper on Thomann. God, Thomann is just amazing, isn't it? It's cheap as. And then on Amazon, a nice little 6% discount over there. So not a huge saving, but nothing to be sneezed at. Takeaways from there, of course, Amazon discounts are modest. The Thomann is still the cheapest, and there is a big price difference between the YSS 475 and the custom Z model. So it's over $2,000 difference. So you've really got to be committed to the soprano saxophone and playing it, long term to warrant that custom Z model. Baritone sax players, I know I often forget about you. I'm not going to forget about you this time around. The 480 model, again, they don't make a 280, is available on Thomann for a 15% discount. They are just expensive across the board, Barry saxes. The YBS 62, big jump up now into the $10,000 range in US stores. So interesting little side note here, it's actually more expensive on SaxShop than it is in US stores, which is just about the only time that this happens. Over on Thomann, big discount, almost 30%, down to $7,299. And look, still a sizable discount on Amazon. Look at that. So $8,999 versus just over $10,000. So $1,000 to be saved if you purchase a 62 model on Amazon. So then over to the 82, which is the custom model, we're up to almost $12,000 in US stores. And look at that. more expensive, significantly more expensive on Sax Shop. So there's something that you can take away if you live in the US. You've got some money to be saved there if you want to buy the YBS 82. It's almost 10% more expensive on Sax Shop, but look at that, 20% cheaper on Thomann and not available on Amazon. So takeaways from the baritone sax side of things is that Thomann is still the cheapest for non-US customers. US stores are on par or cheaper than Sax Shop and possibly other non-US retailers, so a positive, I suppose. And then the YBS 62 Series 2 is the only baritone sax available on Amazon. So really only one chance to get a decent discount over there. Finally, digital saxophones. I know they barely count as saxophones, but I just wanted to check anyway, because again, I know a lot of people are interested in this. So we've got two models, the 120 and the 150. Savings to be had on Sax Shop, as you can see, 20% and 11%. Thomann, again, the cheapest, 30% and 22% cheaper. And unfortunately on Amazon, only one is available, at least to US customers, and that's the 120 model for a 15% discount. So that's about $80 or thereabouts. Again, nothing to be sneezed at, but not a whole heap of savings to be had on Amazon. Takeaways, as always, Thomann is still the cheapest for non-US customers. The YDS 120 is the only discounted model on Amazon, and the YDS 120 is approximately half the price of the YDS 150 across the board. So if we have a look at that table again, notice the big differences in price between those two saxes. Now, I haven't played them both, so I can't really vouch for them and give you my honest opinion, but to be honest with you, from what I've seen from other reviews, I don't know if the 150 is really that much better than the 120, particularly when we're talking digital saxophones anyway. I'd be much more inclined to go the 120 than the 150, considering the big price differences. So, conclusion, across the board, the biggest savings that we've seen are on the entry-level models. Again, quite surprising to me, but that's the way that it goes. Thomann is the cheapest across every single model that we've looked at, and that's obviously only valid for you if you don't live in the US. The US retailers are not competitive on any model except for arguably the baritone saxophones, as we spoke about. US prices appear fixed and global prices are not, best as I can tell. That's a really bizarre thing, being the fact that the US would be the biggest market for saxophones, and you think kind of the home of capitalism and all that sort of thing. The idea of them price fixing in the US and not elsewhere is an odd thing and not a great thing for American customers. Yamaha seems to be preventing dealers from shipping to the US, and that seems to be excessive and, in my opinion, anti-competitive. I mean, it's one thing to fix the prices and then it's another thing to prevent anybody from shipping saxophones bought elsewhere, new Yamaha saxophones, to American customers. Amazon sellers are offering competitive prices on most but not all Yamaha saxophones, as we've seen. And this is my personal opinion, but the 280 and the 62 models are the hero saxes in the Yamaha lineup. The 280 is a fantastic beginner horn. It's a saxophone that you could very well keep for your whole life. And there's even professionals that could easily play on a 280. Having said that, for that next step up, I don't think it's really the way to go to the 480. I would be looking at the 62. The 62 is a fantastic saxophone in its own right. It is a full-fledged professional horn. Don't think for a moment that just because there are the custom models that Yamaha makes that means that the 62 is any less of a professional saxophone, because it's not. It is a fantastic Japanese-made saxophone, highly recommended, and there are some good discounts on those horns, and it is already much more reasonably priced, I think, than the custom models. So those are my favorite saxophones in the Yamaha lineup. Now, before we wrap things up, I wanted to leave you with this. I'm very conscious of the fact that everything in this video has been about price. But price doesn't mean anything if you don't love the saxophone that you just bought. Especially when it comes to intermediate and pro level models, I'm a big believer that wherever possible, you need to try out a saxophone in person before buying it. See how it feels in your hands. See if the tone leans in the direction that you want to take your playing in. And crazy as it might sound, see if it ignites a spark in you that gets you excited about playing the saxophone. That's why I'd hate to live in a world where there are no more music shops stocking saxophones, because it seems like every year that goes by, we get a little bit closer to that reality. So go and support your local music shops and make the most of their services, because so often they are worth the added cost and then some. But it's also true that our wallets and sometimes even our goodwill has its limits. No one should be paying twice the price for a saxophone simply because of where they live. And to be fair, Yamaha sell instruments in almost every country around the globe. And when they set a recommended retail price in that country, it's natural to assume that there will be small pricing discrepancies created as the currencies fluctuate and the markets fluctuate around the world. But I think what we can also establish beyond a reasonable doubt is that the massive price differences that we see in the US go well beyond that territory and into an area that just feels so patently unfair. And it makes me so sad because I love Yamaha as a company. I grew up playing a YAS-23 and I want to see beginners today have access to affordable and good quality instruments. If there's any silver lining to all of this, it's that these big price differences have also paved the way to newcomers in the entry-level space. Companies that want to balance the two priorities between building a quality instrument with an affordable instrument, something that Yamaha did so well for so many years. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, you'll find links to all of the products in this video down in the description below, and this will be perfect for you if you live in the US and you actually want to pay a reasonable price for a Yamaha saxophone, or if you live outside the US and you don't unfortunately have access to a music store like so many of us don't, to actually go in and try these instruments for yourself. Now, these are affiliate links, so if you do purchase something through these links, I will get a small cut of the sale, but just so you know, it doesn't cost you anything extra. Now, apart from these product links, if you want to support the SaxTuition channel, go ahead and hit like and subscribe to get more great saxophone content, hopefully filmed in there. And of course, don't forget to head on over to saxtuition.com where you can find some fantastic courses like the beginner series that'll teach you the saxophone from scratch in only 12 lessons, and supercharged saxophone, which is perfect for the intermediate player looking to smash through that intermediate trap. Well, that's it for this video. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you all again soon.